Welcome, accomplices. I'm Lynda Norman. I'm a watercolor artist in the beautiful province of British Columbia. Welcome to my studio today where I paint with watercolor, and today I thought we'd talk about making smaller objects, bookmarks, greeting cards, gift tags, that kind of thing, using the techniques that we've learned along the way. Sometimes it's easier to practice on a smaller piece, and what better time than the season for giving. If you've been following along, you'll know that we've talked a lot about processes and applying paint to bigger surfaces, paper and canvas. And today I thought we'd pull that back a little bit and use some of the techniques that we've talked about on smaller pieces of mostly paper. Today we'll work on bookmarks, greeting cards, gift tags, that kind of thing. For these projects, I like to use a student grade paper. This is the one I typically purchase here in British Columbia, and it's this is a 12 by 18 inch. It's watercolor paper, cold pressed. It says it's heavyweight, 140 pound, 300 GSMs, but it is student grade, and so it doesn't have the texture. It's not 100% cotton like I prefer to use for any of my paintings, but it's great for smaller projects, and because of the size of it, you can cut it to fit whatever project you want to work on. I use the offcuts for bookmarks, and that's always nice to have a handful of those sitting pardon me, on hand. I do cut several of them to fit the Strathmore greeting cards, which are available in your local craft stores, art stores, online even. I used to be able to get these cards that have a little slot in them, and I just really appreciated them because you could make your art, your drawing, and you just slip it in, and there you have a beautiful card for gifting. Some of these I've used even gifting with a small frame, and so that the person can take that beautiful piece of art that you've done. It's already got a mat on it, pop it into a small 5x7 frame, and I think it's just the perfect gift. These sometimes are a little hard to come by. They are called Strathmore photo frame cards. That's different from the photo mount card. The photo frame cards are the ones that you can slip your art into. The photo frame cards are different, and I will show you one of those. Oh, and they come with beautiful, nice quality paper envelopes as well. Oh, there we go. There we go, gone. Oh, there we go. And so the photo mount cards don't have that place to insert in the center part. So they do have a bit of a border. It may be hard to see. It's kind of an embossed border. So you place your art once you've done what you want to do, and you place it into the framework on the front of the card. So you will be able to measure that and cut accordingly. These aren't cut quite to this size. I do have some of those in here, I believe. So those would fit. And you can glue them. You can use either a glue stick. There's double-sided tape that's really handy to have. Sometimes if you're a crafter, maybe you could get some little foam mounts, and that would sit the image up a little bit on top of the card itself. Whatever you choose to do, have fun with it. There's let's take a little look here, and I'll just do a couple of really quick ones that will fit inside the photo frame card. And to use the techniques that we've talked about in the past, perhaps maybe a bit of spatter. And I will wet my palette again. I've got both my palettes out today, but the one that I filled with my favorite colors, my Daniel Smith colors. I'll go over them again for you, just so that you know what I've got here. I've got Mayan Dark Blue. I've got an Indanthrone Blue, which is a bit brighter than the Mayan Dark Blue. Undersea Green, a little bit of Sepia or Sepia. Aussie Red Gold. Quinacridone Gold. I don't know what I would do without my Quinacridone Gold. And then we've got some neutral tint, some Moon Glow, rather, some Quinacridone Purple, Quinacridone Rose, and I've got a bit of transparent brown oxide here as well. I tend not to use the transparent brown oxide often. I prefer to mix my browns with my other colors. I just find that makes the painting more cohesive, but it's there in case I would like to, add it to anything. And then this is the palette that Michael Soloviev has recommended when he teaches his workshops, and it is really beautiful. The colors are lovely, a little brighter than my palette. My palette tends to be a little toned down, a little more earthy, but he's added in some of the phthalates and some cobalt blue and that kind of thing, a sap green, which is lighter than the undersea green that I use, a phthalo green and a phthalo blue, and then there's a Quinacridone Sienna, Quinacridone Deep Gold, which is in the same family as the gold, but just another tone, and then an Indian Yellow, which is a brighter, almost opaque yellow, I find, and it's good for when you're dabbing leaves on trees and things. It just sort of stands out a bit more. So I've spattered a little bit of water on this little thing. What you'll find with these little guys is that because it's not 100% cotton and it's student grade paper, it will tend to buckle quite readily. So you might want to tape it down. But if you can see where the little drops are, droplets of water, and again, this is how I like to do my little trees. Give it some spatter. I don't have my spatter bottle with me at the moment, but that's all right. We make do. And we'll cause the water droplets to just hook up a little bit as we go along. I like to make these kind of wonky little trees. And then maybe it's sitting on a little rock formation here. This is in the vignette style, the one that we'd worked on a while back, that I really just love the white that's left on the page. Leaves so much to the imagination, and I love that about these little pieces. So I'm just adding a bit of a thicker color with the side of my brush. I like to use that to sometimes just give us kind of a scuffled effect, and it almost looks like tree roots and things hanging down. And then just to brighten things up a little bit, I can add maybe a tiny bit of the Quinacridone Gold. And we can pull that down a tiny bit as well, just to give it a bit of interest. So when you're painting, sort of pay attention to what you're doing with the amount of water on your brush. And if you find that that's something you like, then you can kind of keep that in mind for future, right? With two colors, you can make the most amazing things. This one I will probably let it dry a little bit before I go on to any further embellishments, but let's just leave that and set it aside until it dries a bit, and then we'll work on putting a little tree topper on that wonky little tree. Okay. Another fun thing to do, we'll try one with our masking tape technique, and for this one I will just tape it down just so that it doesn't run all over the surface here. This is a piece of foam core, black foam core that I got from Michael Solovyev's Watercolor online shop, and I just love it. I do have now some black coroplast, which is really fun. I've always used white coroplast in the past. Didn't realize I could get black, and I discovered it the other day, so I have some, and I will show that to you a little bit later as well. But it's a lovely product. It's plastic with little corrugated lines through it, so it's easy to cut with a utility knife to the size that you need, just larger than the piece of paper that you're working on, and then you can tape your paper onto it, and it's going to be just lovely. So because this is going to fit into one of those card photo frame cards, I'm just going to have, I just want to mark off a little bit because I don't really want to paint right to the edge if it's going to be slipped behind the edge of the photo frame. So I'm just going to give myself a little bit of a guideline here, just to remind me not to paint right over to the edge. And back with our tape. This is solo tape, again from the Michael Solovyev Studio online, Watercolor Online. And these are, to me, this is like therapy. I could spend hours, and I do sometimes. I'll show you some of the other projects that we're working on. In the evenings, I'll sit and work on the tape. So, keeping in mind that the photo frame is only going to be, I think it's 3 by 5, so we're going to keep that fairly small in there. And these little guys can be shaped and bent. I just want to make sure that I've got something that's wide enough. This is a piece that, maybe that'll work. Just pop that on there to finish that tree off. Like I said, it'll end, but it gives me a better visual if I've got something. And we'll just work this branch over here. Okay. I think that's probably enough. We could put another one there. I think that would be, and just again for visual, I will do that. These can be so quick and simple. Again, I'm just going to make sure that my paints are awake. Don't want to spray my my one that's drying. And with these little ones, even though it's a small piece, I like to stick with a larger brush. This is a solo three strip brush. Holds a lot of water and really nice for big washes. So I can give my sky, and well, I'll do the whole thing. It'll just make it easier to add my colors and quicker. Like I say, these don't have to be long processes. I think for this sky, I don't know if you can see in my palette here, but I'm going to mix a bit of the blue, the Mayan dark blue, with a bit of the, oh, that's a lot, a bit of the quinacridone purple, just to give that sky a bit more purpley hue. And let's put a little hillside in the background. How about that? Pick up a tiny bit of the orange, bring that in, dab in some clouds, bit of yellow for a sunrise or a sunset or something in the background. I'm never sure. I think a sunrise and a sunset can be both, pink or orange. And just put a little bit of that for color in the back. And instead of the undersea green, let's try a bit of sap green in the bottom part here today. And again, with this brush, you get so much texture and so much fun out of it. So that's a sap green. Let's try something from the from Michael's palette selection here, colors, and let's try the quinacridone deep gold as opposed to my quinacridone gold that I normally would use. And we'll just dab a few of those in. And because I put a tiny bit of that quinacridone purple in with the blue, I'm going to go back to the quinacridone purple over here, and I'm just going to add just a dash here and there just to tie it all together. There we have it. If you think you would like to have a little moon or something in the background, you can dip your I can't reach there. There we go. You can dip your paper towel in some water, form a little ball, and just dab out a little spot for a sun or a moon. And then just the slightest bit, I'm going to pick up just a bit from the side well here. And you can dab that in, and it will disperse again throughout that water that's there. If you get a bit of a bloom, go in with a dampish brush, a thirsty brush, and just feather some of that out. If you feel that you need to, your sun needs to be a little bit further reaching, then you can just continue to add the color. With this, it's quite easy because I can add the color right up to where I've got edges for my other bits of the design, and then it will all blend in without blooming. All right. So that is that. Now I always recommend you leave this until later, but because I've got it taped to my work surface and I want to use that surface, I'm going to do this now. So gently take off our tape and be able to create our trees. Now you can see, because this is more inexpensive paper, you can see where some of it is slightly coming off with the tape, and that's what happens when you use cellulose paper. So like I say, if this was something to be more substantial and a framed piece, then certainly your advantage would be to have the 100% cotton paper. Now the cotton paper does come in both hot and cold press and different roughness, different tooth on the surface, and you'll find, through experimentation, what will work better for the style of painting that you would like to do. Now in the past I've used the tab from a bread bag enclosure, and that works great, but you can also use a little stiffer, flatter brush, and often these are found in the paintbrush section where they keep the acrylic brushes, and they're really fun and handy to have. This is where it's really nice sometimes to be able to use the palette dirt, some of the stuff that's sort of sitting on the surface of the wells that you've got on the sides. I don't often clean those out because I like to have that amount of paint sitting there. So I'm just going to tip up a little bit on my brush. And the same motion as if you were using the bread tab. And just give your bark a little bit of definition. Almost just a little curve. That one's a bit more curvy than I had anticipated, but that happens, and nature is not perfect, and neither am I. And we work with that, right? So it's quite, it can be quite quick, quite simple. There is a bit of, the sun should be coming through on this side, so you're going to have the center parts of your trees will be a bit lighter, so we'll stay light with this on this side. And then when we do it from the other side, we'll go just a bit darker. So I'm just going to take a bit of paint out of my paint well and put it on the side so that I can rub some of it off, and then have, so this side of my trees will be, and I've got a bit too much on my brush, so I don't want quite that much. I'm going to go back and add the darkness on this side of this tree, and then it's going to be awkward doing this from this side, but that's okay. You get the idea. I'll try left-handed. Let's try that. Oh, there you go. Look at that. Maybe one day we'll do a whole painting with our opposite hand. Wouldn't that be fun? They all say no. And a little bit under this side here, because this is where the sun isn't going to reach so much. Underneath there. All right, and you could leave it at that. Be nice silvery kind of birches, or you could take a little bit of, very often Moonglow is my favorite addition to these, because when I've got Moonglow on the surface and I decide to go in with another color, say for example my lovely quinacridone gold, it turns to a beautiful gray-brown that is just gorgeous when it mixes on the page. So on this side, I'm going to keep my lighter strokes in the Moonglow. Very beautiful granulating color. It's they call it a fugitive color, which means it's not light fast, which is a shame. But if you if you have a piece that you want to preserve and have it last for a long time, you can spray your surface with something like this. It's a UV archival spray that protects it from any UV damage that may occur. So that's always a good idea. No matter what I do, I will do usually a couple of coats of Kamar varnish first of all. It just helps to sort of set things, and it's not a gloss or anything. It just is a nice product for setting things. I started using this when I was teaching alcohol ink because it was the only product I could find that didn't reactivate the ink when I sprayed it on. So this was always my base coat, and I've just gotten in the habit of doing that, and I like that it gives sort of a bit of a protection to the surface of whatever I'm working on. And then if I spray it with the UV protectant and maybe follow it up if I wanted to with a gloss, if that's how I wanted the finish to look, it would be very, very well protected and can be wiped off with a damp cloth at any time. If I'm doing a bookmark, I'll just laminate them and they're usually good to go. Wouldn't be a bad idea even with the laminate on, if you're using a lot of Moonglow though, to give it a coat of that protective UV protectant spray. Would be nice to have that on hand, I think. Just when you need those little bits of extra protection. So I'm just going to add just a tiny bit of the gold here and there. And you can see, I hope, where when I pull it out through those bits of moon glow and the Mayan dark blue that it does sort of become an organic-y gray-green kind of color, which is just, I think, so lovely. And I'll leave a little bit of that on the white side. I'm just going to go back in, sorry for the arm. And just a bit more gold on the inside of these. This one here. And I think there you have a pretty nice example of a little birch stand in the forest. I'm just going back now to the bottom of the trees, the bases of them, just because we don't want them to just be sitting out there in the middle of nowhere. So we can add some, a little bit of green perhaps, just to make it look like there's some shrubbery coming up around them. Okay, and there, again, even where it wasn't really wet, the tape does take off. You can see there, I think, a little bit of the paper coming off. For a greeting card, I'm not going to worry too much about that. If you remember to pull your tape away from your work, you won't bring any of that paper that's coming off the surface into your design. So there you have it in a very, very few short minutes. A nice little stand of trees. You could always, you know, if you want to add a couple of these little squiggly branch things that come off of these trees sometimes. That's a bit wet. It's not coming out as thin as I'd hoped it would. This is my my trusty Levinson brush, and I can make it look like it's coming off the tree there just by pulling it into the tree a little bit, and then dabbing with my finger to soften that edge just ever so slightly. I put it here where the tape was a bit uneven, and it let the water come through, or the pigment come through a tiny bit. Okay. And then because those are a bit damp and a bit dark, I'm just going to blot that off without rubbing. So you still have the hint of those branches. Have to remember to do this the right way so that your image is the right side up. Mind you, if it's not, it's easy enough to take it out and redo it. Now I made this one quite snug. You don't have to do that. The packages do come with little sticky things. I just find them, for me, a bit awkward to get the sticky things in. But and you know what? I think with this one, I am just going to take just a fraction off so that it slides in a little better. I was a little generous with my cutting earlier. Let's see if that slides in a little better. And because it's damp, it's going to be a little stickier too. Okay. And of course I've got it not centered. There we go. It's generally not this difficult, trust me. I should have cut a bit more off there, I suppose, but that's all right. We'll get it in there, and or not. Let's try it with just a little more off. I just would hate to have it too short and have it fall out. So, you know, as with most things in the studio, you just roll with it. There we go. That's going to feel a little bit better. There you go. There you have your greeting card. That was a bigger job than I thought it was going to be. But you get the idea. It's fun. It's quick. Don't forget to sign it and gift it to someone who loves birch trees. This kind of a card could be good for any occasion, really, any time of year. You don't have to make them specifically seasonal. And let's quickly go back to this one now. So here we have our wonky little Charlie Brown tree. And we can decide whatever we want to do with that. You can paint something on. I have some fun little bits that came from the craft store. And sometimes all I'll do is just put a little jewel on. These are fun if you're doing something for a specific birthday because they're the birthstones, and you could put a birthstone on there, or you could put just a color. Let's have a look here. Sorry for the crackles. These little guys are so fun. I think I like the brighter red. So they come right off, they're sticky, and there you have it. So this little fellow is going to be too small for that one, so we'll put him on, in a white base. There it is, right there. And having learned from the last one, we will trim it before we try to mangle it. How about that? Some papers are a little bit whiter than others, and that might be something that you need to consider. This one's not bad; it matches the frame not too badly. And so there you have another sweet little card. They're really fun to do. The wonkier the better sometimes with these little trees. Such fun to do. The same principles can apply to your bookmarks. Like I said, the offcuts when you're cutting from the big pieces of the paper are always fun to do. They don't have to be complicated. You know, very, very simple. This was a fun one that I did. I love to play with stencils. And just move some of these away. To make some, because my hand's always, you know, a little unsteady, perhaps. So you can do this a couple of ways. For your bookmark or for your card, you can take a pencil and make a light line. And then take your brush and very carefully follow that line. Adding water, just water. Now you won't get quite the same result if you're playing with this technique on a rougher paper because the water will tend to work its way into the little spaces between the pebble, the tooth on the surface. But it can be really, really effective. So there's a bit of bit of water on the surface, not a lot. I can see if I look at an angle, it's pooling in a couple of spots, and that's fine. I might even take a towel and just take a tiny bit out here and there so that my moon isn't just one solid color. And I'm going to go in with just a bit of blue on my brush. Again, this is the Mayan blue. And you can see where the paint is only going to go as far as that water is, unless you push it out further, of course. And if you're more careful, you can get right out to that beautiful penciled edge that you put on. And gently around the edge. You can touch a little darker color in here and there. Give that moon some craters and some shadows. And again, really lightly with your paper towel. Take out a tiny bit here and there. If you want to make your moon look like it's got some roundness to it, you can do a couple of strokes, sort of a semicircle curve, and that'll continue to give you that impression. So there's a nice quick little moon. I'm going to use this just as because it can be wiped off. And I'm going to use a bit of spatter. And let's try something different for a tree this time. Let's try a phthalo green. Just want you to see how this looks and how this reacts. Each pigment is going to react differently with the water because of its makeup, its orientation, right? The pigments that are in it. This one likes to play with the water as well, so it's quite beautiful. You can see where my spritz was a little more of a splat there, so I'm going to take a bit of that out. The beauty of watercolor is that you can move it around, you can manipulate it, you can change it. If you're paying attention to the amount of water and what's happening on the surface and with your brush, there's so many things that you can do that will help keep things moving. Spread this out just a tiny bit because we can. So we've got two trees happening there and maybe another one here. And let's do this one. This one doesn't have as much in the way of water droplets, so again, we can make that happen just by adding a couple of drips and drops here and there. All right, because we've got the phthalos now, the phthalo green, let's try the phthalo blue and make that into our little lake here. Isn't that gorgeous? That phthalo blue and how it's, when it touches the phthalo green and the green is bleeding into it, absolutely beautiful. I'm just going to encourage that to come down just a tiny bit. Because it's a bookmark, as I say, we just want it can go right to the very edge because we're going to laminate it afterwards. And there we go. I'd almost be tempted to leave that because I've got a bit of phthalo on my brush, barely. Take a bit from there. I'm just going to add a bit of that into my moon, just because I want that color to be feel like it's reflected. Okay, so you don't need much, just a tiny hint of it. I love this little brush because it's got such a beautiful fine tip that I can draw things down and make beautiful little points. And I'd be tempted to leave this little one just like this. I don't think it needs much more. I love the beauty of how the phthalo green and the phthalo blue have kind of worked together to create this lovely little blend of colors there. Once it's dry, you could turn it over and you could do something on the back, another design perhaps, or just paint it a solid color. There are some beautiful metallic colors too that you could, or pearlescent effects that you could add to your moon and to different parts of the painting afterwards. But that would be suitable, I would think, for a bookmark. I'd be happy to give that as a bookmark. So I think one last little look at something that I've been having a lot of fun with lately. And that is wooden discs and tabs. You can get them online. I think they're just called a plain wooden ornament. You can paint right on them. They're quite lovely. They come in rounds and rectangular pieces. I've gone ahead and I've taped a bunch of these with my typical birch tree application, and then just gone in with a bit of watercolor and painted the background. I'm going to be involved in a Christmas ornament and art show coming up, so I've been madly painting these. When you take your tape off, you can just add your paint as we do typically on a painting, a birch tree painting. These are really fun and quick to do, and the backgrounds can be sometimes just a blend of colors. Other times you can go in and be a little more specific. I was at a paint group this morning, and one of the ladies gave me a bit of clear watercolor ground to try on this one. So I thought, while I've got you here, we would try that one just to see. We'll do that one, and we will do this one and compare the difference. This one has watercolor ground, clear watercolor ground, and this one does not. So we can do that. Before we do that, I'll just show you quickly. You can draw on these with a micron pen. These I will just varnish and leave them the way they are. I won't add color. And they're fun projects to just doodle away on if you're a doodler or a Zentangler. Really a fun thing to do. And then on the back, I will put to and from often and leave that. And then anyone who wanted to gift them as a gift tag, the person receiving them could always use them as an ornament later on. So those are just a really fun thing to work on, and great for gifting. And it doesn't have to be for for the winter gifting season. It can be for anything. You could put any design you wanted on there. So let's start with how I would normally do these, and I'm going to start with, what am I going to start with? I'm going to start with some quinacridone gold, because that's quite often where we start. And see what the difference is here. Okay, so the paint goes on to the one with the background, with the watercolor ground, pardon me, a little, it's a little smoother. It wants to grab almost like the wood has a tooth without the ground on it. So that's makes sense. So we'll use that as our sunsetish color. I'm just going to spray my watercolors just a little bit more. fairly thick bit of the Mayan dark blue. And then I just want to take just a real barely damp brush and smooth that down a little bit. It'll make it look, where it joins the gold, it will be almost a greenish kind of color. I'm going to dab in just a tiny bit of the purple, just to brighten things up a little bit. And I'm just feathering this in just to give it some interest. And a little bit on the bottom, just for continuity. And I think with this one, let's try some sap green on the bottom, just to... Sap green's kind of a bright green, which is fun. It's fun to have that brightness. I will finish these with a coat or two of varnish when they're done. And because I've got such a big area of green, considering the rest of it, I'm just going to add some dabs of some quinacridone gold. It doesn't really matter what other color you put in. And then dampen off a tiny bit with the paper towel. You can add a bit of water and lighten things up. Oh. Now you see where the watercolor ground was. The watercolor came off a lot more than it would have without the watercolor ground, because this is the one that the pigment is already soaked into the wood. So that's kind of, oops, that's a bit wet. That's interesting. So I'm going to just go back in with sticky. Just a tiny bit more paint. Yeah, it's keeping it quite dark there. All right. And where was that gold? Yeah, so it's interesting. It's brighter, I think. That's what I'm seeing here. Oops. And these can come off anytime. You're not going to damage your wood. You can take them off when they're wet. And because I didn't push them down. I don't burnish my tape down ever. I don't really want it to be sticking that hard. And those bits of the tree trunks where the other color has bled through, I don't worry about that. I can go in and make a tree trunk over top of what's there. You can go in with a damp brush and take out some of the color that's there. This one I would spread it down through and up through the trunk of the tree, and then incorporate my side bark colors as we go. And then we're right back to where we're at with, you know, adding some definition to the sides of their trees, trunks. And they don't have to be really dark and detailed. I love to paint with shapes that indicate what's going on and leave a lot to the imagination of the person looking. So this little guy would be, I may not even add another color to the trunk. I kind of just like the way they are that way. Someone did comment that birch trees have the bands going all the way around. But, you know, they're your trees, as I say, and you can do whatever you want with them. A little bit of darkness here and there, just to give it some highlight. And there you have some little trees. Let's see how this works with the watercolor ground. Okay, so it wants to stop the paint in this application. It wants to kind of stop the paint from feathering out, it seems, which is kind of interesting. So you'd have to be perhaps a little more specific. Because this tree is in behind, I'm giving it a bit more darkness on the bottom. A little bit of shading. And I'm just going to go up the edge just ever so slightly, just so that it's got a bit of a shadow on the back side of the tree. And now I'm not using the very tip of my brush, I'm using just under the tip, just below, just slightly. So my brush is at a bit of an angle and I'm just pulling it across really lightly. You can always go back and darken it. It's easier to darken than it is to lighten. You can lighten a lot, but sometimes it's just not quite as effective. So I will just soften some of those colors across. Someone mentioned in the comments in a previous video that they used puppy pee pads to soak up any water that they're splashing around, which is a great idea. I haven't, we have a puppy and we never used them because she trained really quickly and I gave them away. So I'm going to have to go and ask for a few back, I think, just to try that because I think it's a great idea. Someone else mentioned using shop towels, the blue shop towels. And I've been trying that out. I find that they tend to mush up. They're almost like a tissue, and I don't care for that because it leaves, once they get to a certain stage of wetness, they tend to leave a bit of muck on your surface. But there you have it. Once they're sprayed with a little bit of varnish, a little bit of a sheen to them, I suppose you could wax them as well. There's a product called Dorland's wax, or there's Gamblin's wax, and you could do that. Takes a bit of elbow grease, but it certainly would give them a beautiful finish. So there we have all kinds of ideas for your small projects, things to do when maybe inspiration's not firing and you're not coming up with the the big masterpiece. I just love these. As I say, I can sit in the evenings and apply masking tape and doodle and have fun with them, and it doesn't take long, and you'll have a project ready to gift. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed the session. If you like what you've seen, please subscribe to my channel or visit my website, bandrystudio.com. That's BANDRAOI studio.com.